r/Nosleep. Posted by you/likeeyedid. A peculiar melody in our town is attracting strange visitors. In the matter of one night, everything around us had changed to the picture-perfect image of a town built inside a snow globe. It was only September but the snowflakes were falling down like glittery candy cotton sprinkles. Neighbors were outside sipping something I assume was the new version of hot apple cider while they were decorating their homes. I don't know what festivity they were getting prepared for and I was scared to find out. Marville was always a fine place but the view I had this morning outshone anything I'd ever seen before. It was surreal. The street looked beautiful. Everything was radiating an atmosphere of coziness and everyone who touched it was immediately swayed over. And it all started with something as seemingly ordinary as a grocery store changing its products. Every little item looked as if it had been giving a light touch to assure it was just that little bit different than the original version. Why would anyone take that effort, I wondered, while a part of me was sure that we had entered a new universe of sorts. "Honey, what is going on with you?" The voice of my own mother standing behind my door was sending shivers down my spine. "You missed breakfast, boy, that is no way to be. You didn't even say hello to our visitors last night? If this behavior continues we have no other option but to punish you," I heard the stern voice of my father say. He was usually nothing like this. My dad is the kindest man I know but whoever was knocking on my door was not my father. And that giddy woman was not my mother. I could tell from the sound of their fingers scratching on my door. It sounded corrupt and malicious. "Listen Logan, baby, we need to open the cafe early this year but..." She took a long pause. "But we don't want you to help," my father finished her sentence. Not that everything happening around me was weird enough already. I couldn't for the life of me understand why my parents wouldn't want me to help. I mean, I never minded the work. I liked driving down to the shop with either mom or dad in the morning, being greeted by the smell of fresh coffee beans, and preparing muffins and brownies in the kitchen. I know it's not your typical teenage fun activity but our coffee shop is nice, the people who visit are as well and they always tip generously. I took a deep breath. I couldn't hide from them forever, they were my parents after all. Yeah, last night I was sure I wanted to get the hell out of here but I couldn't really leave them here, could I? I walked up the door and opened it. My parents almost fell right into my room. They had been leaning on the door this entire time. They were both wearing the same exact clothes as yesterday but their faces looked messy as if they hadn't slept at all. Mom's makeup was runny and Dad's I was twitching like crazy. I decided to ignore their looks. I was afraid of what they might answer if I asked them about it. "Why don't you want me to help?" I asked in the most normal voice I could force myself to speak in. They exchanged a strange look. "Just for now. You can help us when you feel better. I prepared breakfast. Go eat," my mother instructed with the biggest fake smile I had ever seen on her face. Then without waiting for a reaction, they turned around at the same time and walked down the stairs. Seconds later I heard the front door shut. When I heard the car engine start, I finally made my way downstairs. A part of me was scared shitless that the visitors of last night would still be around but the house seemed to be empty. However, as I got closer to the kitchen I heard something. The melody was still playing. The tune I heard in the grocery store and that had followed me all the way home. My heart was still racing like crazy when I jumped inside the kitchen. I have no idea why I did that. I thought it might scare away anyone that could be in there. I could have run outside the front door of course but considering the entire town had just changed into a landscape from a picture book, I felt safer staying in here. I was both relieved and shocked when I saw the kitchen. There was no other person in here but instead piles and piles of food. It looked as if my parents had been cooking all night long. I don't even understand when they bought all the supplies. The food here could have fed an entire football team. There were fish, meat, and vegetables that all looked like jelly and they smelled like nothing I had ever smelled before. There were bowls filled with mushy substances, all stacked on top of each other. Cakes that were made out of something that resembled concrete. As my eyes tried to process what they were looking at, my stomach started turning again. I was starving but simultaneously felt revolted. There was no way any of this stuff would ever touch my lips. If this was an art project I would have been astonished but considering my family thought this was legit food that we ate every day was a concept I couldn't comprehend. And it was all so much. I could hardly make my way to the kitchen counter to finally turn off that godforsaken radio. As the quiet settled in I realized that the tune had been in the back of my mind all night long. Well, now I was realizing that it wasn't in the back of my head but literally in my kitchen. The silence was the nicest thing I heard since yesterday but the quiet wouldn't stay for long. I heard our back door close shut. I didn't hear it open through the sound of the music but whoever opened it was already inside. My eyes went through the kitchen. Maybe I could climb through the window quickly, but what then? "Hello?" I shouted. A part of me hoped it was one of my parents who forgot something, but another part of me really didn't want to see their faces either. Mum's smile was still engraved into my brain. "It's me. Are you alone?" It was Damien. I hadn't heard anything from him since coming home yesterday. I tried reaching him but went straight to voicemail every time. Tessa hadn't responded to any of my texts either. I was positively freaked out since her text yesterday saying don't eat anything. She clearly knew something, or she made that assumption because her parents had gone insane as well. And that left me with another fear. Damien was a little too keen on trying the snacks. I didn't answer, but Damien was already standing in the doorframe of the kitchen. He looked miserable. He had bags under his bloodshot eyes and his hair was going in all directions. We both looked at each other. It seemed like neither of us was sure what to say. Then his eyes wandered through the kitchen. "Did you eat anything?" he asked. I shook my head. "Have you heard from Tess?" I asked. He looked behind him and mouthed something I couldn't understand. Seconds later Tess appeared behind him. She had scratches all over her face and arms and looked seriously disturbed. "Logan, you need to come with us. We need to get out of this town as fast as we can." We got inside Tess's car. It was still snowing, the ground was just slightly white. People were outside laughing and chatting, and for a second it looked like a regular day in December. Except it was September and half of the people out here did not belong. They were all dressed in black, slightly old-fashioned outfits, and their faces were too perfect to be real. Their cheeks were all rosy, their teeth thoroughly straight and white, their hair not a bit out of place. As we drove past them, their eyes and heads turned to follow us drive off. They did not look happy. "What happened to you?" I whispered towards Tess. "My mum. She went completely insane. She had made all these weird meals and tried shoving them down my throat. I kept resisting and so she became violent." The most fucked up part was her face, however. It stayed perfectly still the entire time, as if something else on her inside was controlling her. My parents were like that too, but they didn't attack me. "I'm so sorry, Tess," I responded. She just shook her head in disbelief. When that happened, I ran to my room and texted both of you. She followed me though. It was so scary. Damien came over after he read my text, just in time. We fought off my mum and drove to the bookstore. The bookstore was a small shop that Damien's parents owned. We used to spend hours there when we were younger, reading almost every book they had. "What about your parents, Damien?" I asked, but then I remembered. His parents had left for a holiday. Right. Never mind. "Did you not eat anything?" "Actually I did. I was starving when I got home, but we didn't have much in the fridge. I thought about going back to the store, but, I don't know, something made me stay home. I still had eggs, so I fried them up. They looked normal though." "And you feel normal?" I asked. He nodded. "As normal as you can feel in a situation like this." "Maybe it's only things that get imported," I mumbled. Until this moment this entire absurd situation had felt insane and slightly threatening, but now we were sure that we had to get out. Tess's mum was always loving and kind and certainly not violent. Whatever she ate had turned her insane, and soon it might do the same to everyone who lived here. It felt so weird having this intense sensation of fear while looking at a surrounding so beautiful and innocent. Kids were playing, the shops were all open, everyone was getting ready for a season of Glee. The three of us had turned quiet. There was so much to discuss, to wonder about, but after the events of last night, I think we were all trying to make sense of it ourselves. At least my mind found it hard as hell to adjust. The contrast was insufferable. My brain was working overtime. So much, that it took me a good minute until I noticed the music. "Did you turn on the radio?" I asked Tess, who was sitting behind the wheel. "No," she whispered, "it just started." She was about to turn it off again, but Damien held her hand back. "Do you hear that? It's changing," he said. He was right. At first, it sounded like the melody we heard in the store and that was playing in my kitchen, but the further away we got from the town center, the darker it became. We were really close to the town border and the music sounded as if someone had thrown the sound of La Vie en Rose into a blender. The initial tune was strange but familiar. It gave me a warm feeling despite the fact that my head knew it was scary. But what it was changing to now was so much worse. It was the sound of humans crying. And then the crying turned into screaming. "Turn it off," I commanded, but neither of my friends reacted. They were distracted by something far more horrifying. We had escaped from the center of town and our surroundings looked far different on a first glance. There was no more snow and no strangers dressed in black. For a moment it felt like we had gotten out of that nightmare. But then we noticed them. The bodies. Tess slowed down. We didn't believe our eyes at first, it was simply too gruesome. There were multiple people hanging from trees. Their eyes opened wide in terror. At the end of the street, we noticed a car that had crashed right into a tree. Whatever was left of the people inside was now blood and goo. "Stop the car!" Damien shouted, and we came to a swift halt. He slammed his door open and started running towards something at the end of the road. Shit, I thought and hoped from the bottom of my heart that he hadn't spotted his parents in between the corpses. I quickly unbuckled my seatbelt and ran outside following my friend. Tess stayed in the car, her expression was frozen. Damien turned around before I could reach him. "Don't look," he whispered, but it was already too late. There were people lying on the road. They weren't Damien's parents, but I did recognize a woman. It was our high school teacher, Ms. Jones. The most intelligent and most friendly person I'd ever met, lying in a puddle of blood with a pipe pierced through her insides. "They killed them. Everyone who tried to escape," I whispered. Tears shot to my eyes but were quickly followed by a feeling of nausea. I thought I'd pass out any second, and Damien looked just as pale as I was feeling. He started saying something but I couldn't hear a word. I tried to respond but my words didn't make any sense. I suddenly started feeling this urge. I knew I would never leave. This was our end. We would stay here with Ms. Jones. La Vie en Rose played in my head, accompanied by cries and screams. My thoughts were mush. No concrete thing came to my mind. Then I noticed the car. Tess had come closer. I don't know how we did it, but we somehow ended up back in the car and Tess pushed in reverse. The further we got from the outlines of the town, the clearer my thoughts became. Those people hadn't been murdered. They had taken their lives at the border. I knew it because I felt it. There was no way out of here. We were stuck in our picture-perfect snow globe.